Hello, folks, and welcome to our game with myself, Shane Stapleton. As always, Michael Verney here joining me at the hip. We're going to have Adrian Mullen on the show. We're going to have David Reedy on the show. And why not? Because there's a huge league final coming up. We're going to be previewing everything, Michael. But can't help but start at some of the results we've seen during the week in the football. Like Paul Honeyman knocking it out of the park for Leitrim underage team as they beat Mayo. That was in the under-20s. And then Longford beating Dublin in the minors. What's going on?
And Offaly beating Kildare in the 20s as well, the defending All-Ireland champions, which was a big result after we got beaten by Louth the first day out. Yeah, there's been some funny results, even in that under-20 group with Kildare and Offaly and Louth. I think there might be one more. There's a possibility that you could have 3 teams finishing on 4 points and only 2 of them qualifying. So, yeah, it's very exciting. And there's been, like, there was a last week, was it a case? I think Leitrim had won under 20 minor, and then they were contesting the league final all within a couple of days of each other. Like there's been some, I wouldn't say seismic results, but important results for a lot of counties. And it's funny when you look at Dublin's results in minor, I would say over the last decade. They've been in a handful of Leinster finals, and they haven't won many. But they've been in, have they been in something like 10 under-20 finals or under-21 finals in a row? So whatever they're doing, they're definitely doing something massively right from minor all the way through to 20, but don't seem to focus less on the winning side of things, maybe at minor. But great result for Longford the other night. And there's been some brilliant results and brilliant games, and great to have coverage of these games flying around, because it's impossible to get to every game at this stage. And even just on that Offaly under-20 game the other night against Kildare, it was a real backs to the wall performance, but they were up 7-3, I think. 7-3 it was near the end. Kick out goes straight to Kildare, man, arms outstretched, ball in the back of the net. All of a sudden it's 1-3-7. Kildare kick the next point. It's 1-4-7, and they're level, and you're thinking they're going to kick on and win the game, and Offaly get the next score to win the game. So yeah, there's been some brilliant games, brilliant results, and some surprise results, and results that breathe a bit of life into maybe counties that are a little bit off Broadway at the minute as well.
Yeah, Wicklow is another one. They're under-20s. They've qualified for the Leinster quarterfinals. They've beaten both Carlow and beat them well the other night, 3-11-7. They'd also beaten Wexford, I think, before that. I see a comment in here from Richard Hogan, and Shane didn't even bring up the Tip Minor footballers. Not only will I mention the Tip Minor footballers beating Limerick by 9 points, but also last Saturday putting Waterford to the sword 5-13 to 8 points. So, there's a bit of love going around for a lot of the counties that traditionally aren't superpowers of football.
No, without a doubt, yeah. And in fairness to Waterford, their 20s were beaten a point, I think, by Limerick, I think, the previous week. And then Clare got a last-minute goal the other day to beat them in the minor, wasn't it? So, there's counties performing pretty encouragingly, I would say, at underage level that maybe aren't absolutely ripping it up at senior level. And sure, listen, you know how excited I've gotten about the Offaly minor hurlers and under-20 hurlers in recent years. Whatever about the here and now and what you're seeing at senior level, just to know that there's an exciting crop coming, or there's a group coming that have beaten some of the bigger hitters, or at least been really competitive with them. It does, it breeds a lot of energy into a county, particularly counties that maybe are struggling at the minute. And that Leitrim result last night was brilliant. In fairness, Andy Moran I think he's manager with the 20s and the seniors. I can't imagine how, the demands on your time when you're doing something like that, particularly when you're not from the county. I know he's not a million miles away, but they were very competitive, I think, with Galway first out in the 20s. And then that was a big result last night, because from everything I'm hearing, that is a pretty fancied Mayo team. And it was, comprehensive enough on the scoreboard, 3-12 to 15, and bagging 3 goals as well along the way. So a huge result for them.
Yeah, for sure. And let's go. John, in a way, though, I can see why Andy Moran would want to be over the 20s, because he's probably not just looking at this as a 1-year project, it's 2, 3, 4 years. And let's say he's sort of priming some lads who he thinks, right, this lad could be on my senior team in the next couple of years. And then that player goes back with the 20s and he's played in a different position, or not played at all, or whatever way Andy Moran's overall plan is.
Conditioning-wise as well, Shane, isn't it? Conditioning and knowing that the 20s that he's going to have in a couple of years, he has them, I suppose, conditioned the way he wants to have them conditioned. Interesting, I listened to Emlyn Mulligan talking the other day, and he just said he only, he spent a brief enough time under Andy Moran, but it was some of the most enjoyable time in football, just because he said he was kind of all out attack, and he said he kind of needed Mickey Graham to come in and just shore things up. And I know they didn't get a great result against Laois in the Division 4 final at the weekend, but I think, as Pádraig Joyce kind of learned to his detriment there a few years ago, you can have kind of fanciful ideas of how you want to play, and then the reality of senior inter-county football bites.
Yeah, are you seeing there that the Leinster GAA head, is it Derek Kent is over the Leinster GAA, and he was talking about the championships being alive and kicking. This is the Leinster Senior Football Championship and Senior Hurling. Nothing could be further from the truth, really, when it comes to the football championship. It's a damn squib. Is it 18 out of 19? Dublin have won. That's going to be 19 out of 20 soon enough. Meath, the only team to beat them in 2009. Bit of a freak result that day. And in the hurling championship, there's almost no jeopardy. We saw the group stages last year when Galway and Kilkenny just went through the motions for a drawn game and then obviously met later on. I mean, it flies in the face of reality to say that they're alive and kicking. They're holding back the GAA.
They're alive, all right, but I'd say they're probably on life support, particularly the football. The football, definitely. Like, you take very little. Like, if Dublin weren't in Leinster, you think this is a really good competition where you're thinking maybe Louth, Westmeath, Meath, to a lesser extent, maybe Kildare. You've lots of teams. You throw a blanket over most of them. The Dubs are head and shoulders ahead. There's no point in saying any different. And don't let them be beaten in the league final mask that. There's a load of big names that are going to come back into the mix. Now, I understand where you're coming from the Leinster Hurling Championship, but there was a fair bit of jeopardy last year in the sense that Wexford could have ended up down in the Joe McDonagh very, 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 very easily. So last year probably flew in the face of what we've seen before that. The real jeopardy
was rubbish.
Say that again?
Most of the round robin, bar what you're saying there, a little relegation thing popping up, it was rubbish.
Well, it wasn't a little relegation thing; it was a big thing. But
okay, but I'm saying in the context of how many games were played, most of what we saw felt irrelevant.
Yeah, and like barring a couple of big shocks, like it was going to be Kilkenny and Galway in the final. And really, one of the most intriguing things this year is probably the race for third again, and how the Wexford game, first time out at home against Dublin, whoever wins that game, barring it's a draw, you probably have a fair idea who's going to be third after that, don't you? Realistically, and you don't want to know. You want it to be like, well, listen, it's only 2019 when we had the unbelievable drama of the final day where we didn't know who was going to be where and who was going to qualify. But it kind of seems like a while ago now. And listen, it'd be a big departure to say anybody but Kilkenny and Galway are going to be in the final.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's a question here from Adrian McGrath, and I'm going to throw this at you as the Leinster man. Lads, can you discuss the ludicrous no jeopardy Leinster hurling underage system for Kilkenny, Galway, Wexford and Dublin? Tipperary looking good at the football. I suppose you have to be good at something with a little winky face.
As in, what he's talking about, the lack of jeopardy at underage, as in the amount of games you get and you're still in the competition at the end of it, I presume is what he means. Yeah, listen, the thing about the provincial councils is that the counties that come out of Leinster should be better equipped as a result of that, because they have more games along the way. Often a heap of games before they played the Leinster final even last year. I think provincial councils will probably do what's best for themselves. Like I understand what he's saying with a lack of jeopardy, but I do like the fact that, I'm sure it's the same in, let's say, the Munster under 20, that you're getting 3 or 4 games that you never would have gotten before. Like, what's the jeopardy? What's the jeopardy that there has to be somebody eliminated at a certain stage? That's fair enough. I suppose at least your draw has been stacked against you if you don't perform at that round robin level. But I think I have to say, I think it's been a good departure that provincial councils are making sure that these teams get lots of games, and it's not like, Offaly played one game at under 20 and they were beaten and they're out, and next year would say they're beaten in the first round again and they're out. At least they're getting 3 or 4 games, and that's likewise for every county. But I understand probably what he's saying. Like, listen, Shane, GA structures are mad. We've a structure in the Offaly Senior Football Championship this year. Like, this is absolutely bonkers, where you're guaranteed a quarter-final place no matter where you finish in your group. It's absolutely bananas.
How do you get relegated?
You can't get relegated. No, there's 8 up. Not this year anyway, I don't think. I'm fairly sure there's 8 teams involved, and each of them are guaranteed a quarter-final place, regardless of where you finish.
Right, okay. Look, we've plenty of topics to go through. Just want to remind people we've got a championship preview night coming up in the Dome in Thurles, presented by Sean Tracy's GAA. John Milan, Kieran Carey, Eddie Brennan, Seamus Callan. You can check that on the Sean Tracy's X site or our own. Just scan the QR code there. And the next item that I want to come to, well, I suppose I'm going to go through a few comments first, is River Power saying, was going to go to the league final, but then Storm Kathleen says she's coming. Good luck, says I. Stockroom Tim says weather is going to make a balls of things. Jared O'Dwyer, with the Atlantic steadily warming and bringing more rain to the wet wee island, should the GA consider relocating the championship to Lanzarote? I was thinking, we might ask some of the players when they come on a little bit later on. Has the start of the championship ever, and the football championship is starting this weekend, obviously it's the league final in the hurling, but have we ever had a softer, in terms of the ground, underfoot conditions, softer start to a championship?
No, Jesus, not in my lifetime that I can remember. It would have been. You have to take into account, it's only in the last couple of years where anything would have been happening at this time of the year anyway. It would have been 3 or 4 weeks later, and it generally would have been, conditions would have changed. I've never seen anything like it. Clubs must be pulling their hair out the length and breadth of the country just to even get somewhere to train. And it's grand saying, oh, we'll get a practice game here. Practice game could easily cut up a club field and destroy things for everybody else, basically. So it's really, really tricky. Was only chatting Lee Chin yesterday, actually, at the Leinster launch. He's working similar to Kieran Donaghy. He's working in I think it's Clearwater, it's called, basically astro pitches all around the country. And they must be licking their lips with the way the weather is. What an advertisement for astro pitches. What an advertisement at the minute for the Dome, shall we say, as well, which you'd have to say is one of the best pieces of businesses that has ever been done in the GAA, considering the costs involved. And it costs just over 3 million, I think, from start to finish. I can't imagine. I'd say you're looking at probably 10 to get something like that done now. It was done just in time. I think it was finished. Was it just before COVID or in the early months as COVID hit? But if you don't have access to an all-weather facility at the minute, you're in big trouble. And there are clubs that say shelling out even big money to get in various places. I'd imagine timetables on astro pitches in schools, etc., are absolutely packed to the rafters at the minute, because it's just what pitch, barring you have the luxury of a sand-based pitch with lights, you're not going to have a pitch that's available to, stay going through all the traffic and all the weather that we have at the minute. So it must have rained for the last 100 days. I went out doing a bit of coaching the other night, and it was lovely. 7:30, sun was splitting the rocks. It was beautiful. Coming in at 9:15, and we got poured down on top of. Even the nicest days, it seems to be accompanied by rain at the minute.
Oh yeah, sure. I headed off for training there the other night, and by the time I got out there, it started lashing. I was ill-equipped for the weather, and I've a flu ever since. So there you go. And actually, that's another thing. How many there's a lot of colds going around, and I'm sure every manager is pulling their hair out at the moment with players messaging them saying, "Look, I don't think I'll be able to train this evening, or I have a chest infection, or whatever." I mean, we don't know going into the league final this weekend what player is going in there feeling under the weather, and same with the championship on the football side of things.
Yeah, I always think it's kind of prudent enough, particularly after a big game of sorts where a fella might be getting ragged on over a bad performance or something like that, to try and find out if there was something wrong, because at the end of the day, once you cross the white line, it's totally unforgiving. Nobody cares whether you had pneumonia or whether you had a flu or whether you had a cold or whether you missed 2 trainings or anything like that. And that's only known by most of the people in the panel. But you can guarantee that there'll be lads having various bits and pieces going into the weekend. 100% there will be. I had to jump into a car and I was drenched the other night for 20 or 25 minutes. And yeah, same as you, unless you're getting a hot shower for 10 or 15 minutes, nearly straight after, you have a fair chance of picking up something. So yeah, it's a very, very tricky time at the minute. Even though the evenings are a bit longer, the weather and the conditions are still pretty miserable.
Kieran McBreen says hurling league finals and start a football championship on the same weekend. Many games will split as passes by in a blink. Split season not working. Championship needs room to breathe. That's one of these conversations that's really hotting up at the moment. A lot of intercounty managers saying it doesn't work. A lot of commentators, but many parts of the split season are massive. So I wouldn't be winding back the clock. As I said, I wouldn't mind going back a couple of weeks the other way, because the J1 issue is a big one. Lads heading away for the summer, lads heading away for the J1 championships. Like in Dublin, I would say the championship will start in the second half of July. I think it was like July 17th last year, and you'll have lads that are still away for 3 or 4 weeks on J1s, and it's causing mayhem. And also the Dublin Hurling Championship will start before the All-Ireland football is over, meaning that some players or clubs will have to object to playing if they still have a player in with the Dublin senior football panel. So that's all a bit frustrating. Slight change of topic here, Michael. Pierce Murray saying, wondering what is the process for you getting new hurleys? Do you like heavy, light, banded, and what hurley makers did you use? Did you go to workshops, and what size? Well, me and Michael would normally just go to a chair manufacturer and take one leg each because we weren't using it to hit too much ball.
Well, I saw a hurl that Johnny Pilkington used in an All-Ireland final, and it was essentially the leg of a chair. Like, it was the worst thing I've ever seen. And I think he still threw over a couple of points in the same All-Ireland final. I always went to a workshop. Brian Gatt, who's about 10 or 15 minutes from home. And even if I was coming down the road from Dublin when I was living in Dublin, I'd pass into his place. I'd probably go in, like, I don't know, you don't break near as many hurls now as you used to. And even technology's improved a lot so that if you do break one or crack it or whatever, barring you destroy it, you can get it pieced. And I don't know, I always loved a pieced hurl as well. I always thought it was nearly better than the new product. I would buy hurls this year for next year. So I could never buy a hurl and go and play with it a couple of days later. I just think you kind of needs time to balance out and season a small. But I'd leave them out in the shed maybe for 6 months, or leave them at the door of the house or something like that for a while, let them season, and then come back to them whenever I needed them. But I never liked using new hurls. No, it was not something I liked. I generally would get them. I always got them the double banded, but that was because it was like nearly a fashion thing in the 90s. You know, the Wheelitons used to always get that done, and most people had followed suit around Offaly. In recent times, no bands at all, to be honest with you. And I got kind of used to that, but it all depends. My favourite hurl would not have had a band on it until it was pieced, and that would have generally been the case for the last good while. I loved it. I loved the process of going out and getting your new hurl, though. I love the you know.
I couldn't care less.
No, I actually really enjoyed it, and different ones that you get the feel of, and you tip around with different ones. You might get a little bit taken off the handle if it was too thick, or you might get it sanded down a small bit. I just couldn't pick up anything and just use it. It just, even mentally, I just wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah, for me, it either felt right or it didn't. I didn't have a process. It was just like, okay, that hurley feels right. We'll get that, and we'll use it until the thing basically expires in my hand. So I wouldn't have been fancy. I wouldn't have been particular about putting the grip on it either. I'd normally see who in the dressing room is fairly particular about their grips. Nisha Waldron would have been a regular one. I'd just go over and say, Nisha, will you do that there? And he'd be happy to do it because he seemed to enjoy doing it. So I couldn't care less. If it works, let's go with it. It's suitable for flaking. They're all suitable for flaking, Michael.
My mother put on every grip I ever used on any hurl I ever used. I wouldn't trust anybody else, and I'd be too useless to do it myself.
Okay, change topic again. So the topic, Ben O'Connor being asked about one of his players. So obviously he's the under-20 manager, and this references one of his players, Adam O'Sullivan, and the Simcox Cup final involving Spirit Nave Bishopstown. And the manager of that school, he was talking about their clash last week. This was and he was basically talking about, he was asked about the non-involvement of O'Sullivan in the game. And he was saying in an interview with Owen Cormacan, I don't know what to say really. It's not for me to comment. I think when lads can play, they should be allowed to play. Given them the confidence to play. Don't leave them with anything in the background. You can play, but there should be no buts. Adam's after going through 2 years now of Simcox finals, and he wasn't able to play in either of them. He was on the line with us today. He stuck with us all the time. Now, at the same time, Ben O'Connor was asked about this, and he said, I wasn't asked by anyone in the school, could he be released to play anything? We had no issue with any of the schools, and goes on in that vein. Now, there's definitely been a bit of a pickup on using the term released. And I don't know, like the idea that a player couldn't be made available for his school, I think, look, you'd object to that. But generally, there's sort of a hierarchy that everyone's aware of, even though it's not written in stone, it's not part of any GAA guidelines. But a county team generally pulls rank, certainly at this time of the year. But then when it comes to the summer and its championship, the club will pull rank because obviously no inter-county competition of any importance will be on. So would you take up on the whole wording of a player being released?
Yeah, they're like, he's part of a county squad, and that's fine. But he's also been part of a school squad for the last 6 years as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, so, and to me, like, that competition is here and now, and that's happening right now. And this is, I don't know, sure, like, would that be his last schools game potentially? I don't like that type of terminology. It's very kind of soccer like terminology where
Yeah.
you've been released. You've been released. Now, it's kind of funny actually with soccer that you're released from club duty to play for your country, which actually kind of makes sense because your club is paying you, and you're going to play for your country, and it's representative or whatever. But I understand what you're saying, and it's definitely it's an unwritten kind of a rule, but there has become a hierarchy in recent years where county kind of pulls or calls a shots. And I just, like, he's not going to be able to play schools hurling forever. This is probably the last time he can. And I think it would have made sense for him to play the schools game. I understand as well from a county manager's point of view, you want everybody available to you on a given day or whatever. But yeah, I don't like that kind of terminology. And I think something was brought up from something Ben had said maybe the previous year as well, that kind of half contradicted what he said the other day, but at least he didn't shirk the topic and he talked about it. And Ben O'Connor, in fairness, always does, very rarely does shirk anything. But it's that type of thing is not something I like, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but I feel like there's more of a focus on the terminology, which could be incidental in how Ben is saying it, because like everyone is aware of how this hierarchy works. So he had also said at the end of this particular quote that lads not involved in the match day panel on Friday are going to be playing club matches the weekend if their clubs have matches. Everyone was released to have a match. So I think it can also depend on the relationship you have with said county manager, and of course, this is one of these things where maybe the clubs need to sort of band together and go to the county board at the start of the year and say, look, we want to know by Friday, is our player going to be named in a league panel or whatever it is, so that we then know with like a day or two's notice if that player is going to be available, and there's not going to be an awkward situation. I mean, for a club league game, we don't have an awkward situation whereby we have to, let's say, call up our player who's a county panelist and say, look, do you know yet if you're playing, or what's the crack, or like, do you know that if you don't get game time on Saturday, will you be available for us on Sunday? And does the player ask the manager? Does he wait till after the game? Because obviously he doesn't want to put in the manager's head that, I'm more focused on the club match than I am with playing with the county that weekend. Or does the manager call the club team call the inter-county manager? You see, there's no obvious process to make sure that this is all done in the right way. And that's a big part of it. And that's typical GEA. Sure, look, we'll figure it out as we go along.
Kinda, it needs to be communicated really well, and a lot of time it's not. You know yourself, the first time you might know the players available is when they land into the dressing room. If they land into the dressing room, they might be sick over not being part of the panel and not want to. They could end up doing something else. But like the number 27 to 36 that aren't going to be taking part, I think it's someone within the county setup has to talk to their clubs and let them know pretty much immediately that they're available. So if that information is coming out to 26 on the Friday, mightn't be coming public until a couple hours before the game, but the managers of the next 10 players, shall we say, or the next 14 players or whatever it is, they need to know that these lads are available to them. Yeah, it's a tricky one from a player's kind of point of view, because they want to play games, and because otherwise, and it's happened in counties before where lads didn't make a match day 26 and they weren't released to play a club at the weekend, and then all of a sudden you go through maybe a whole league on a county panel where you've played very, very, very few games, and all of a sudden there's a potential for you to actually regress by being in with a county panel, which is ridiculous and should never happen. But I know for a fact that happened with lads in Offaly for a good 5 or 6 years, definitely, without a doubt. The lads that were not getting a few minutes, that weren't starting, weren't getting their few minutes, weren't part of the squad. Maybe they were going to the game and they were just tipping around, and they weren't released to play a club at that weekend, and you end up getting worse. And that's the exact opposite of what should happen at county level. So it requires a hell of a lot of good communication, and we're probably, as an association, not the best communicators in the world, to be honest.
So basically, as things stand, there is no communication. There's no formal lines of communication for this whole thing to be, as a going concern. It's not going to disappear next year, the year after. I think, like, it probably the easiest way for it to happen is the clubs to sort of, a few of the club managers at the top tier talk, kind of get together, go to the county board. And you know what? This probably has happened, and they probably just get knocked back. But I suppose the more that the clubs push this sort of stuff, and it can be very hard to coordinate a lot of clubs that are normally at each other's throats, isn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt, yeah. And like a lot of the time, some work well together, but a lot of the time, club managers and county managers are in conflict with each other about lads that they have involved in the squad, lack of game time for certain fellas, club being, how should we say, being second tier or potentially third tier in regards thinking and releasing of players and stuff like that. So a lot of the time, that's why, the really good county managers seem to have, like, I know Limerick are All-Ireland champions and it's easy to say it or whatever, but John Kiley always stresses the importance of the club, as did Brian Cody, to be fair, with Kilkenny, and they released lads, and there was rounds of Kilkenny Club Championship maybe organised fairly on an ad hoc basis. If Kilkenny were knocked out and they weren't playing for 4 weeks, they could go back playing club a week or two later. So
some of the Longford football team were playing club last weekend, even though they're out in the championship this weekend.
Yeah, that's a peculiar enough one now. But it could be a case of a couple of lads that maybe didn't see that much league time and they need to play a game.
Some starters.
Okay, that's mad. That's a bit mad now.
Well, that is the case. So there's the other side of the coin. Viewers out there, if you can let us know, is there any sort of a formal process in your county, or what would you like to see done about this to sort of just make it run a little bit more smoothly and not make it awkward for players who, they want the manager to know they're dying to play for the county that weekend, but they also want to play that weekend. If they don't play with the county, they want to play with the club. So is there any formal process, or what would you like to do? Kilkenny against Clare Saturday evening, assuming that the weather isn't too bad, they're going to clash 7:15 at Semple Stadium. When you think of this game, what are the initial factors that come to mind before we bring out the tactics board?
Just one thing I was thinking was, with the incoming Storm, wouldn't it be funny if it was Storm TJ, or if it was Storm TK, or Storm Duggan?
Brendan back in 2020 when he was going to town.
That's right. Yeah. I just thought that would have been peculiar if you knew there was a big match coming and you decided, okay, we won't name it after myself. We'll name it after, someone who's going to star on Saturday night or whatever. What are the initial things that come to mind? I think I know it's a league final and I know it's 2 weeks away from championship, but I think both could do with winning it. And are both are in a situation where Kilkenny were beaten in their last 3 national finals, all by Limerick, in fairness, and they've won 4 Leinsters along the way. Clare were beaten in the last 2 Munster finals, and they're obviously beaten in that de facto league final in 2020 by Limerick as well. So I know it's close to championship and all that thing, and they're not going to celebrate it greatly, but I think it's very, very important for both of them to win. From a Kilkenny point of view, if Kilkenny beat Clare again in a big game, that's 3 in a row. If Clare are able to beat Kilkenny and kind of, silence or kill off any sign of there being any sort of a hoodoo with those black and amber jerseys, I think that would be important too. And you might just say, like, they're not big things. I think they're big enough. I think they're big enough things. And I think ideal scenario for both teams would be, win by a couple of points after a tough game that doesn't go to extra time and where you don't lose any marquee men or anything like that. And you would be expecting, from a Clare point of view, I don't know, like, who do you expect to see maybe back in the fold for Clare this weekend? Definitely would expect to see a couple of the marquee lads that have been out back in the fold.
Yeah, I'm not sure Tony Kelly is ready, but, I'd expect, if he's available, Shane O'Donnell to be an option and maybe David McInerney to be an option. Ryan Taylor, not sure that he's ready either. So, like, if you had Kelly and Ryan Taylor, you'd be looking to play them. If you have McInerney and O'Donnell, you probably will see a little bit of action for them. If I'm Kilkenny, obviously you've got Antrim in the first round of the Leinster Championship, and at times Antrim have given them a little bit of bother, but I think we expect Kilkenny to win that game no matter what 15 they put out, and it will be a strong 15. But I think Kilkenny can go full ball-headed for this And one of the main reasons that they'll want to perform really strongly against Clare is actually to put down these whole jibes that the likes of, smart arses like me might say, where, Kilkenny would struggle in Munster or whatever. They'd love to get one over on a Munster team straight away, so that anytime anyone talks about that whole topic, they can be like, well, you look, we beat Clare in the All-Ireland semi-final last year. We franked the form by beating them again this year. We beat them the year before. They're supposedly the number 2 team in Munster.
We beat Limerick in the league semi-final as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, all that talk goes down to Swanee. And I think for their own confidence, it's huge, because the way that they were beaten last year in the All-Ireland final, the last 20 minutes or so, the game was dead in the water. Every time they now play one of the perceived top teams, which Clare certainly are, they're going to want to lay down a marker. Isn't that the whole thing about, if you play a team that you're going to meet in championship, and I'm even talking about club, you meet them in the league, all the talk in the dressing room, all the talk from both sides is we're going to lay down a marker for championship. Isn't that precisely what you hear every dressing room you're in?
Yeah, every league game I've played against a big opponent, you're kind of thinking that. And it's funny, and I say this from a Burr perspective, when Burr were flying it and winning Club All-Irelands, they actually didn't play league for a long time because there was no need, because campaigns were drifting into St. Patrick's Day a lot of the time. Yeah, it wouldn't have played a lot of league, no, would have played very little. And funnily enough, we would have started playing league then again. I'm just going to throw it out like around 2010 or whatever. And you would have been playing with probably weakened teams where you have a good few lads representing the county. And then all of a sudden, teams are beating you, even by a point or two in league games. And maybe not that year, but subconsciously, a couple of years' time, you're meeting them again. And I don't know. I always find it's nice to have beaten a team, even if it is a league game. And I think it eliminates a little bit of that mystique around them. And we would have had a bit of a mystique around us at the time. And I kind of, thinking back on it, I'd say, geez, we maybe shouldn't have given those teams the opportunity for that to happen, really. And maybe if that's not playing in a competition when you know you're going to be weak, and maybe that's the case. But I always think if you can get one up on a team, and the opportunity arises, you take it. And I think both Kilkenny and Clare will be going fairly gung-ho for that opportunity, particularly Kilkenny, because time is on their side a bit more, and fixtures are on their side a bit more too.
River Power says Clare beat themselves twice last year, playing the Munster final in the Gaelic grounds and playing the sweeper 15 minutes before going out in the field in Croke Park. Now, we don't know for sure if they decided 15 minutes before the game that they were going to play a sweeper.
I highly doubt it somehow.
Well, my question would be more around who they decided to play as the sweeper rather than actually playing as a sweeper. You need someone who's, like, one of the big things about playing sweeper, as far as I'm concerned, and they threw in Shane Morey, who's a very good player, but like John Conlon was the obvious option for me, and let Morey mark somebody. Because like if you've got that relationship between a fullback and a centre back, and I suppose everyone really in the full back line, really, the centre back can nearly look backwards, see what side his man is marking the attacker on, and know to stand 10 yards left or right because of it. And like, I think the more you play together, the more little things like that, the little nuances can allow you to operate very well as a unit. Whereas if you're just throwing it in and trying it for the first time ever in Croke Park where you can't communicate and figure things out, talk things out, can be game over as it was.
Tell you a good one, Shane. I heard this, and I won't mention the county involved. It must be a decade ago. I think it was a decade ago. They were playing a big hitter in their own province, and this happened, like 100% this happened. And they were kind of half talking about playing a sweeper against them, and they kind of hard, like this is middle of the season, like, and they just, done a few bits in training on it or whatever. And lads were not particularly happy about it and voicing their concerns or whatever. So they sat down in a room, they were having a team meeting, and the question was posed by the manager about whether we should play the sweeper or not. And everybody was asked to close their eyes, and if they thought they shouldn't play the sweeper, they should raise their hands. And everybody closed their eyes, and a heap hands went up, and they didn't play the sweeper, and they were annihilated. But I just kind of think it was funny that sort of a decision, that big of a decision, was decided in that type of a manner at county level. Is just mad.
You're saying Brian Cody did that?
Show me the time they were annihilated.
Well, only in All-Ireland finals against Tipperary, but I doubt it was.
Yeah, where they definitely didn't try a sweeper.
No, I'm joking.
The opposite, quite in fact. Maybe a sweeper would have shored things up a lot.
Maybe a little bit. Okay, but obviously I was only joking about Kilkenny. I have no idea who it was. But just in terms of the tactics and the matchups and stuff like that, people, as always, get your comments in. We love to get them in. But I might just bring up the potential teams for the final. They may or may not be. I mean, this is based on the league semi-finals and the fact that you would imagine that Aidan McCarthy is going to start after that performance. Maybe Mark Rodgers would be right, maybe not. But I'm just wondering if number one, if you're Kilkenny, you know John Conlon's going to be centre back. Do you put someone like John Donnelly in there to try and win ball off him to scrap for a ball? Do you put Billy Ryan? Do you put him in centre forward and hope to run at him? Adrian Mullen to kind of drift off him and get scores. Conor Cleary against TJ Reid. We'll imagine that would probably happen if Reid is playing full forward. Does he follow him out to centre forward, or is it Conlon against TJ Reid? And then even if you look at the half forwards for Clare, for whatever reason, David Fitzgerald always plays wing forward, but always wears number 8, and Cathal Malone midfield always wears 10. But anyway, that seems to be the case. But will it be Richie Reid or somebody against Fitzgerald? Blanchfield against Duggan? You know, what way do you see this working out?
I would have said that Blanchfield would match up reasonably well with Fitzgerald, even I'd say David Fitzgerald, because of by virtue of the amount of years he's played at Intercounty, is obviously probably maybe a stronger beast than David Blanchfield. But I do think they'd match up reasonably well athletically, and he'd be one of the few maybe that would be able to stay with him. Potentially, could Shane Murphy go out to wing back, maybe to pick up Peter Duggan? I just don't see that. I don't see either the two half forwards necessarily suiting Richie Reid. And I think Richie Reid is a brilliant ball player. I don't think he's an unbelievable marker. So that's why I think the matchups will be particularly interesting from that point of view. Like who's Hugh Lawler going to pick up? Because
you know what? Could it potentially be more like this? Now I think Duggan has this nice, really good talent for catching the ball with his right hand as well. Something that Danny Sutcliffe is the only other one I can think of off the top of my head that's good at actually going up with both hands. So I think Blanchfield being a left-hander, that might actually make it a little bit more difficult for Duggan. Maybe Deegan would go over on Fitzgerald. I don't know nobody really has the pedals to go with David Fitzgerald, but maybe physically, even just under the puck out, he might match up okay there. And then Richie Reid, potentially against Rodgers. Other than changing actually the starting team, I'm not really entirely sure what other way you'd go with the matchups if you were to just rejig the half-back line alone and not... because Shane Murphy has been quite good. Like he was very good against Casey before Casey got sent off the last day, following the travelling corner forward. So maybe he'll do that job on a Reedy or a McCarthy. And then Lawler on Galvin, it's quite it's a size mismatch. I mean, obviously in terms of like 50-50 ball hit into the air, obviously it's good for Lawler, but low ball, you'd imagine, would favour Galvin. And then Tommy Walsh against McCarthy, maybe that would happen, or maybe he'd swap on to Galvin. Like there's a lot to sort of figure out there if you're Brian Lohan.
There is a fair bit to figure out. I'd say even just knowing from even Brian Cody's time and even, the early stages of Derek's time as well, Kilkenny probably won't change too much. And they won't change 3 or 6, I wouldn't think anyway. Maybe they will, but I don't think Mark Rodgers necessarily on Richie Reid is necessarily a good matchup for Kilkenny either. Do you know what I mean? Because Rodgers will drift and he'll go back very far, and Richie Reid is obviously going to want to hold that area there around the 45. There's a good few matchups there where you're not sure who's going to pick up who. But then you look at it from a Clare point of view and you're thinking, like I'd say Adam Hogan's a certainty to be on Owen Cody. To me, Hogan is one of the most annoying man markers in the game, and I mean that with the highest of praise. And he's able to even develop his game where he can kind of hurt lads on the front foot now as well going forward. He's able to deliver that kind of stick pass that can be put over the bar. He's able to even put over a chance himself if he ends up out the pitch. So that's kind of one guaranteed matchup. Think about Conor Cleary and TJ Reid. If TJ plays a 14, I think that's probably a good matchup for Clare and a good matchup for Cleary. But like TJ was under nearly every puck out that Owen Murphy put down the last day. So he might be in a full forward at different stages, but I'd still expect him to be out in the half line for the vast majority. And it's kind of funny. I was chatting Jackie Tyrrell about this yesterday, just for a piece in the paper on Saturday. Like TJ is 36 and a half, is he? He's 37 in November, I think. It's mad to think that he's still generally always operating in around the engine room. Like, he's generally operating around that middle 8 the whole time. And I actually thought it was kind of interesting. He chased back after Cottle O'Neill the last day, and Cottle O'Neill got the initial step on him, but he wasn't losing ground on him.
Yeah,
Definitely
yeah.
was. And he had the hurl in and was about a couple of inches away from getting a hook in on him as well. So it's amazing to think that. And I said it to Jackie as well. Did you ever think, like, when he came in 08, that this fella would still be around now? And he said, to be honest with you, I didn't even know if he'd be on the panel in a couple of years because of his lack of work rate at the time. And now all of a sudden, what's his greatest strength is probably that, and he's injury-free at the minute. I remember seeing him in club games at Ballyhale where he maybe wouldn't chase as much, and it was kind of, I'd say, predicated by the fact that he was carrying something. But he looks to have a fairly clean bill of health at the minute, and I'd expect him to be at the edge of the square sometimes, but I would largely expect him to be out in the half-forward line, and that creates a little bit of a conundrum for Clare as well.
And, when people talk about, you keep hearing about, you need a good culture in the dressing room. Well, a good culture probably starts when your best player is willing to work unbelievably hard. And then so is Owen Cody, and so is Adrian Mullen, and Richie Reid works hard. So they've actually got players, like, it's no surprise that, allied to the fact that they've got huge talent, that the work rate's really, really, really strong, that they continue to be a really successful club. Generation after generation, they've unbelievably hard-working players. And then it's just the talent that tops it off.
Well, if you're Derek Ling, Shano, and you could just say, like, what do I expect from Harry Shine or Billy Drennan or whoever it is, any of these young Kilkenny lads coming in? And like, as Jackie said it to me, he said, surely he just points at TJ and says, this is what we need you to do. This is our best player, and he's breaking his arse for every ball, from the first second to the last second. So it's a great example. And listen, he got that example probably from Henry as well. Who probably picked it up from somebody else. So, but it is a great example to set when your best player is the one that's probably working the hardest. You'd imagine it sets a fairly good culture, as you say, for the group.
Yeah, Traumspieler says that Rogers was concussed badly versus Tip and had to go off. I'd rather Rogers sit the league final out to be raring to go against Limerick instead. Richard Hogan suggests Shane Murphy probably on McCarthy in the full back line, more physical than Tommy Walsh. And Tommy's fairly physical at the same time. Surely Keown will start ahead of Hogan. Now, the reason that I'd say to give Hogan another go is, like, they've had a really good look at him in the league since he returned from duty from O'Loughlin Gales. And they already know what Mossy Keown is going to give them. So let's find out what Luke Hogan can do in a league final. That's why I'd be thinking maybe he'll get the start here.
Yeah, I also think Mossy's a very dangerous player to be bringing in when defences are starting to tire as well, with that kind of pace he has and that style he has. Listen, there could be changes before throwing, but I'd say Derek Ling will largely go with this, or named anyway, will largely go with the same team as the last day. Could there be 2 or 3 changes before throwing? Potentially. But like, on your point, I think he knows what he's going to get from Mossy Keown. This is another test for Luke Hogan, who, outside of the flicked-in goal and the rebound the last day, was probably quiet enough. So this is another chance for Ling to see, okay, is that a really viable option come summertime?
Yeah, okay. Comments, Richard Hogan, interesting to see if they'll use Luke Hogan on Conor Cleary. Has done well so far and will cause a few problems. Obviously, his confidence has got to be up getting that goal against Limerick the last day. Adrian McGrath, Hogan is clearly very friendly and engaging. He seems to have long chats with his man. Maybe ask Reedy if Cody should study dairy farming teaching or some other such subject for the chat.
I'd say there's a fair bit. There's dripping with sarcasm.
Yeah. Well, look, you get your comments in when we get our guests on the show today. Then I'm just wondering again, like, Cian Kenny and Jordan Malloy did very well in midfield against Keane Lynch and William O'Donoghue. Now, they're probably against a more combative type midfield here with Darrell Owen and Cathal Malone. Now, both lads are very good hurlers, but you would be thinking that Kenny and Malloy, quickness along the ground, like sharp turns, they're smaller players, very nifty players, and rely on their skills as well. So it's 2 fairly different types of midfielders, speed and maybe swiftness versus a bit more physicality.
Yeah, I'd be expecting Cathal Malone to really try and stamp his presence on the game as he normally does. He's just a very no-nonsense kind of player, isn't he? Like, and he's well able to, like, he's as accomplished as anybody at taking a score from distance now, but he's a very, very physical player. And I know the 2 Kilkenny boys adapted very well to the physical challenge that Limerick threw at them in the middle of the field last day, particularly Kenny on O'Donoghue at different stages. But this is kind of a different game, different setup. Malone's role will be interesting. I'll put it this way. I think if Malone has an 8 out of 10, I'd say Clare would be hard enough beaten. But if the two Kilkenny boys kind of dominate is probably not the right word, but if they get the upper hand in the middle of the field like they did the last day, that's an area that Kilkenny have struggled in. And it'd be interesting to see where Conor Fogarty comes back into the mix when he's fit. Might feature maybe at the weekend. Will they go with that one experienced soldier and maybe a more physical player along with Malloy or along with Kenny, or will they stick with the two kind of raw enough lads middle of the field? That'd be very, very interesting to see, because it's somewhere they've struggled in recent times.
We're not going to ask Adrian Mullen too many game specific things, because obviously
we'll ask him what the team is going to be and where's he going to be playing and who he's picking up.
But would you, if you're Brian Lohan, do you want Brian or do you want Diarmuid Ryan following him out the field, because Diarmuid Ryan is very good at driving lads the other way, or Cian Gavin, who maybe you can see the potential that he can drive players the other way, and there probably is a score in him also. You definitely want Conlon holding centre back, but if I'm probably Derek Ling here, I'm thinking, well, look, if you put Mullen wing forward, Clare are certainly going to have someone following him out the field, whereas if he's put centre forward on Conlon definitely needs to hold. So now I've got a conundrum where I either let Mullen go off free, or I have to almost detail someone to man mark him, which takes away something from somewhere else on the pitch.
Yeah, and listen, these are all the things that the managers go through and thinking, how can we upset Conlon's such a big player for Clare? How can we upset him? How can we make him start thinking about maybe something other than his defensive duties? He wants to kind of sit back in that pocket and defending around the D. Whereas if you put Mullen in centre forward, either Conlon has to drift out a small bit, or somebody else is going to have to pick him up. If somebody else has to pick him up, then you're hoping that there's maybe a bit more space for one of their midfielders or a half forward to manoeuvre in, if they've just detailed someone specifically on Mullen. You mentioned about Diarmuid Ryan there. I don't know if Diarmuid Ryan picking up Adrian Mullen is necessary. I don't see Diarmuid Ryan as much of a marker. I think he's your classic kind of wing back that does a lot of hurling, but maybe his man could do a decent bit of hurling as well. Do you know what I mean? And he's obviously capable of scoring from distance. But I wouldn't see him as being one that would be maybe detailed to man mark. Cian Galvin probably more so, I'd say.
Do you know, I'd see, and I know what you're saying, because I think Diarmuid Ryan is good at driving forward with the ball from deep areas. Now, you know how I feel about people shooting from 100 yards too regularly, but leaving that aside, I think he's got the athleticism to get up and down all day. Mullen's obviously an excellent forward and can make a fool out of most lads, but it's not like the man marking in the sense of you're in, let's say, isolating the full back line. You've got someone who's going over and back those short little movements all the time. When you're marking somebody a little bit further out the field, it's a very different type of man marking, and it's just, do you have the legs to stay with this lad? And when you get on the ball in the front foot, you can do damage going the other way. That's how I'd see it working.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It is totally different man marking someone in around that middle third than it is to playing corner back, marking a corner forward, or full back, marking a full forward, or something like that. It's totally different, yeah. And there's actually they can get on the ball in so many different ways in around that middle third as well. They can take it from the defence, they can take it from their own forwards, it can be recycled backwards. But the one thing you mentioned there, you will get on the ball. You should get on the ball if you're playing that role, but you have to be able to do damage with the ball. In fairness, Diarmuid Ryan, if he was playing that type of role, if he's in possession, he's definitely going to do a bit of damage with it.
Okay, well, look, we might come back to that game in a little bit of time. I'll just run through, especially when we have the two boys on the show for the interviews, but just going through some of the other fixtures we have coming up in the next few days. Well, this evening, actually, in Munster, in round one, Tipperary against Cork. Clare will be against Waterford. Those games are in Thurles and in Ennis. In the under 20 on Friday, Clare will meet Limerick, and Waterford will do battle with Cork. That's in Farfield. The Leinster under 20, this is on Saturday. Offaly against Galway, Laois against Kilkenny. Tier 2 of the Leinster under 20 is Meath, Derry, Kildare, Kerry. And then the Munster Minor Hurling Championship, Tier 2, round 3 is on. Laois against Kerry, Antrim, Wicklow, Carlow, Kildare, and Meath against Westmeath. Anything jumping out at you there?
No, there's one little interesting aside. Wicklow were absolutely annihilated in round one of the minor championship. Westmeath beat them I think we could have been 8 goals in 23 or something like that. To a very, very small tally. But they ran Meath very, very close in their second game. So just kind of, minors are funny. They were missing 3 or 4, I think, the first day, and they had most of them back the last day. Like I've seen in school games. I remember being over Banner in a school game. We were up with about 20 points in a game and looked like we were absolutely coasting. And underage games can be funny. You can see the goal or two, and all of a sudden, like the floodgates can open. We ended up holding on and winning by 1, like in the wind-up. So, yeah, underage results can be kind of particularly a bit peculiar at times. That Offaly Galway game is going to be interesting at the weekend as well. Fascinated to see how that goes.
Okay, well, look, delighted to say now we've got Kilkenny senior hurler Adrian Mullen, who's teamed up with Alliance today to look ahead to the upcoming Alliance Hurling League Division 1 final this weekend. This year, during their 32nd year sponsoring the competition, Alliance has been campaigning for children and young people to stop the drop. That's a hashtag stop the drop, and remain involved in sport when transitioning from primary to secondary school. For more information, visit alliance.ie/stop the drop. Adrian, how are things with you? You well?
Well, lads, how are you?
We're not too bad. Michael has something prepared for you. We're not going to put you on the spot asking you about the match this weekend and what would it mean and all that sort of stuff. Michael instead has a bit of crack lined up for you.
Yeah, no, this is robbed from Jamie Carter and Thierry Henry, Adrian. It's basically winner stays on. So I'm going to pit two Kilkenny players against each other. You have to pick who your favourite of the two of them is. And then he'll go up against someone else. And you just pick whoever your favourite of the two is, okay?
Okay, sounds interesting.
Yeah, first up, Mick Fennelly or Colin Fennelly?
Mick Fennelly or Colin Fennelly? That's a tough one now.
Cousins, aren't they?
Yeah, well, we're cousins of mine, yeah. But, obviously, they're brothers, but
yeah, both cousins of yours. Listen, you're kind of done no matter who you pick, but
yeah, and you have to pick one, do you?
Oh, geez, you have to pick one, yeah.
I can't sit on the fence here, but who would I pick? I'll go for. I hope they don't take the heart now, but I'll go for Mick, I think.
Okay, good. That's Mick Fennelly. He's now up against Eddie Brennan.
I'll stick with the cousin. I'll go for Mick.
Okay, Mick Fennelly or Owen Cody?
And what's this based off now? Just
it's based on who do you think is a better player, or who do you prefer of the two as a player?
I think Mick has achieved a bit more, so Cody still has to prove himself a small bit more. But,
okay, perfect. Mick Fennelly or Tommy Walsh?
Oh, that's tough now. That is tough. Look, obviously they're both absolute legends of the game and two absolute greats. And I think they both a hurler of the year.
Yeah.
And multiple All-Stars, but I think I'll have to go with Tommy on this one.
Okay, very good.
No, Adrian, when I did this with him the other day on the Offaly players, he just started like writing love songs to every player. Every time you had to leave someone out, he just wrote a love song live on air. Don't fall into the same trap.
I hope now I don't burn a few bridges now, a few lads now over this.
Basically, what I did, Adrian, was it was Brian Whelan against Johnny Pilkin, and I'd say, "Oh, Johnny was brilliant, and he was my manager." But Brian Whelan, that was basically what happened. That's basically what happened. So that was we've Tommy Walsh now still. So Tommy Walsh or TJ Reid?
TJ,
okay. TJ Reid or JJ Delaney, the best defender that ever played the game, I reckon.
I think it's going to be TJ from here on in.
Okay, perfect. I'll finish it with this one. TJ Reid or Henry Shefflin?
Look, again, I'm going to stick with TJ, but obviously the two guys that you mentioned there, JJ and Henry, like if you did have to pick them, there'd be no debate about it, like either, because they're all such greats and such legends and have achieved so much in the game. Like, so, if you picked any one of them, you'd be happy, man. Like, but no, I'll stick with TJ. Just on
TJ, Adrian, like, does he miss much? Does he miss much training? Is he taking much time out, or is he just the sort of fella that he finished up with Ballyhale at the end of October and he's just like, mad to go nearly as quick as possible. Like, he obviously played his first bit of league this year. He hadn't played league in a couple of years. I'd imagine he sets a fair example around the place for everybody else to follow.
Yeah, he most certainly does. You know, like TJ is 36 years of age, and you know, if you're just judging by how well he's performing, how good of condition he keeps himself in, how athletic he is at the moment, how just all the attributes to his game, and like he seems to still be improving and still proving himself. Just like the last day, you know, he got a man of the match against Limerick, and he only played 50 minutes, but you can just see how sharp he was and how good he still is. And you know, he's, in my eyes, he's still improving, he's still getting better, like, so you know, and that's obviously just down to his overall attitude and how he approaches everything. You know, he ticks all the boxes. He's basically a professional at the end of the day. You know how well he looks after himself away from the pitch, how well he trains. You know, it's just something for us younger lads, and you know, any lads coming onto the panel, and any of the older lads on the panel, like, just to look at what TJ does and how well he does everything and how he approaches everything. Like, it's great having him there, and he's a great example to everyone. Like,
have you gone down the road of slagging him about his age yet?
Oh, we have, yeah. Geez, we have. You know, he's not getting any younger anyway, but you know, you can see a few grey hairs sticking out, but
look, don't we all?
But yeah, as I said, judging by his performances, like, you know, I don't think age comes into the equation. Like, you know, just by how good he's performing at the moment. Like, so.
Is whether it's club or counties, you know, the way there's always a player that you like to puck ball with because they puck that sympathetic ball into your hand. Is there anyone that you really like pucking around with and really hate pucking around with? Because people always hated pucking with me.
Yeah, look, I suppose there's a few lads on the team now. You know, you go out beforehand and you might go out to 10 minutes before training actually starts, and you know, you're pucking balls to each other. A few boys now might test your touch there and you know, be drilling balls at you, and you know, you mightn't be warmed up at all, but you know, they're really testing you. And I won't name names now, but I think within the camp and within Kilkenny, you know, there's a few lads that you might try avoid.
Can I just ask you on that, Adrian? What would your mentality be before a game? I remember one time, it was actually before an under-21 final in Offaly. I think I must have missed nearly every ball in the warm-up. And you're just falling over balls and making mistakes or whatever. Like, what's your mentality in a warm-up? Do you like everything being perfect and getting your touch perfect, or do you nearly prefer to miss the one and have to go back chasing after it? Or if you miss a few balls in the warm-up, is it getting into your head, or kind of what's your approach to that? Or do you just, once the whistle blows and the game starts, it's a completely different setup?
Yeah, look, to be honest, myself, I wouldn't look too much into it. Like, you know, whatever happens. You know, it's you just try to be relaxed, be composed. You know, a warm-up is probably just for, I suppose, warming the muscles up, getting the eye in, getting the touch in. And, you know, if you happen to miss a few balls in the warm-up, or, you know, miss a shot on the goal, you know, I wouldn't get too hung up about it, like, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's when the ball is thrown in, that's when it really matters that you're on point and on form. Like, so, yeah, no, you're probably just building towards that, and just taking it as it comes, really. Like, you know, you're not getting too bogged down on it, really.
Are you sort of a relaxed person in the dressing room and in the half an hour leading up to the match, or are you one of these lads getting psyched up or having the crack even?
Yeah, look, I suppose to a certain degree, you know, you'd be relaxed, you'd be kind of having the crack with the lads, you'd be, you know, joking, sneering, having the crack, you know, maybe listen to a bit of music, but then, you know, it reaches a point where, you know, you kind of have to flick that switch and probably, you know, get in the zone, and you know, like, you're going out to you know, if you're not in the zone and if your attitude isn't right and the head isn't right going into these games, like, you're going to get blown out of it. Like, so you're just trying to get yourself into a zone where, you know, you feel that you're at it and you feel composed, and, you just feel mentally tuned in. And I suppose that's probably in the 10 minutes or so before you go onto the pitch.
Do you have a trigger or a like even a song or anything that you listen to that would be a go-to to like, okay, I'm in the zone now, that part of the day is over and now we're into the area of getting ready for what's awaiting us, or anything like that, or a process that you go through or anything like that?
No, look, I wouldn't be too particular, too superstitious about stuff now, to be honest. But no, you just know yourself, and you can judge by the people, the rest of the lads in the dressing room. Once you see one lad is getting focused and getting ready, and you're doing your last few bits of your preparation, and then that's when to kind of tune in and start focusing and leave the messing and the joking and all that to one side, and just concentrate on the task at hand.
And another thing I was going to ask you is about how old are you now, Adrian? About 23, 24?
24 now.
24. Is this your sixth intercounty season? Did you start in 2019?
Yeah, I've been there since 2019.
Yeah. So like you're probably, I don't know, mid-range in terms of experience level in Kilkenny at this stage.
Look, I suppose 2019, 2024 now, like, so that's 5-6 years I've been around the Kilkenny setup. Like, so look, I've been involved in a few All-Irelands and a few different occasions, like, so you gain a bit of experience from them and you learn from those experiences, and you just try to take from all, really, all the good experiences, the bad experiences, and learn what worked out and what didn't work out, and just try bring that bit of experience to the team, and hopefully try do that bit better, and hopefully the younger lads coming in can feed off you as well.
There's a question here. When Brian Cody retired, did the Kilkenny panel make a presentation to him or anything? Did he talk to you about it, or how did it go down?
No, look, there was it was fairly. I actually can't remember how it went down. I think it was just maybe a WhatsApp message out to the group, and just Brian letting us know that he's stepping away for the year ahead, and I think that was it. Brian himself probably didn't make a fuss about it or a song and a dance about it, like, but I think it was just a WhatsApp message out to the group, and just saying that he's stepping away and thanking us and stuff like that.
Was that weird even for you, Adrian, and lads of your age? Like, am I right in saying, there never would have been any Kilkenny manager during your lifetime, only Brian Cody, I think. Am I right in saying that? I think I am.
You're right. Born in '99, and I think he took over that year. Like, so, he was the only manager when I was growing up until obviously Derek took over in the last couple of years. Like, so.
Would there been anything in particular that, like, or a lesson that he would have taught you maybe during even your early years or anything like that, or did he lay it out plain and simple what was required, would say, to get to play for intercounty for Kilkenny?
Look, Brian, he probably, I suppose, he had his standards, and which obviously revolved around work rate, attitude, just your overall willingness to probably die for the jersey, die for every ball, and I think that's what it does require, because any day you go out and you're not 100% mentally tuned in, or your attitude is that small bit off, like you do get blown out of it, like, so. I suppose that's probably what I've learned from him the most, that you just, every day you go out, you have to be 100% at it and 100% tuned in, and the attitude just always has to be there.
Yeah, you've been great with your time, Adrian. Just a final question before you go. Now, we asked you all about the Kilkenny players earlier. Who's your favourite non-Kilkenny player in hurling at the moment?
At the moment? That's a tough question. There's so many good players at the moment. Obviously you have your Galans and your Keane Lynches, and then
can only have one now, Adrian.
Yeah, I'm going to go for an up and coming man there, a fellow Offaly man.
You're
young
never
Adam
going
Screen.
to come up. You're never going to come up against him. You see, he's not going to be marking you at neither. So it's kind of a handy one too.
I'll go for Adam Screeney there. Yeah, just
Oh.
just the way he plays, and he has a bit of flair about him. Like so, yeah, I'll go with him.
Okay, well, look, Adrian, really appreciate you joining us, and hopefully we'll chat again not too distant in the future.
Cheers, lads. Thanks a million.
Cheers, Adrian. Good man.
Okay, great to get those insights there. Hugh Paddy, Carlo Man, of course, is Chris Nolan, surely. We're going to have David Reedy on pretty soon, and we're going to do a bit of a Q&A with him as well, just have that bit of fun. But will we try and do a little bit of football before David comes on? Yeah, well, look, I actually think the meeting of Monaghan and Cavan, and while, we've fairly strong hurling view in here, I still think like people who aren't necessarily massively into their Ulster senior football championship preliminary round clashes will still find this interesting. Like Monaghan against Cavan, two neighbours. And like I was looking at the exposure to top opposition that both of these teams have had in the last few years. And if you look at Monaghan in 2023, they played Division 1 and finished 6th. Then they went to the championship and they played Tyrone and Derry again, Clare, Donegal, Kildare, Armagh, which they won on penalties, and then Dublin. So like that's a really strong list of teams that they played. Whereas last year, Cavan, they played in Division 3. They finished second in that division, but won the final. Then the championship, they played Armagh, ended up in the Tailteann Cup, and they played Laois, London, Offaly, and Down. So if you were to say what the teams did last year and how to prepare them for this year, it feels like Monaghan, they have an awful lot more kind of under their belts in that sense. But they did finish 8th in Division 1, whereas Cavan finished 3rd in Division 2. So that might even it out a little bit. But certainly Monaghan will feel like they're far more road tested over the last couple of years. Yeah,
they probably will. I have to say that I was very impressed with. I haven't seen them in the flesh, but very impressed looking from afar at what Ray Galligan did in his first year at Intercounty. This year, outside of the two dominant forces in Division 2, which are Armagh and Donegal, they were next best in a fairly cutthroat division. They got some great results along the way. Were narrowly beaten in a couple of the games that they did lose as well. And had plenty of talent. It's not that many years ago that they won the Ulster title under Mickey Graham. And then you have Cavan have been steady the whole way through Division 2. Monaghan have had a tough Division 1 campaign. Won their first game, lost the next 6. A couple of bad defeats in the middle of it. I thought towards the end of the league, they were kind of getting back to themselves a bit, particularly against Tyrone. I thought at different stages in that game, that was, the Monaghan that we know and love as a, watching them from as a spectator or whatever. Like McManus is going to be available to them. Jack McCarron will be available. There's a couple other lads. Like Andrew Woods. I don't see anything about his red card being appealed. So I'm assuming he's out for the weekend. And they have a couple of other bits and pieces. Desi Ward pulled a hamstring against Mayo, and a couple of other knocks that they're carrying into it.
Stephen O'Hanlon and Michael Hamill, they need them fit.
Yeah, like they all lit it up in the first couple of rounds of the league, and then have played very, very little since. And who was it that went off the last day? Micheál Bannigan went off the last day as well. I believe he'd be available to play. There's a potential as well that Rory Beggan could play too.
It's the big thing, isn't it? Because he only just came back last week, and obviously he's been away in American football, the international player pathway. And Vinnie Corey was asked a few days before his return, he was asked about, and he goes, "We're happy with the enthusiasm and positivity that Darren McDonnell has showed." Now, he played all 7 games, even though there would be learning points in it for him. But he has bounced back and kept coming. As far as we're concerned, Darren is in there and it's his position at the minute. And as I said, this was before Beggan came back. Now, this is a bit like Desi Farrell bringing in Cluxton. If you bring the guy back in, you're going to play him. But what sort of message does this send out to Darren McDonnell, who has played the entire league? And does it send reverberations through the panel, or does it send calm through the panel, knowing that you've got a money in the bank goalkeeper there?
I'd say the latter, to be honest with you. And it's not as if like he's been involved in the panel this year, and he's been in and around the panel, and he's been training, and he's been part of the, not the match day squad, but he's been part of the, excess squad, should we say, for some of the early games in particular before he went off to the States. And like Sherman haven't known anything but Rory Beggan in goals for the last decade. Like I think he took part in a training camp over the weekend. Like I wouldn't be that surprised if he started. Been honest with you, would it be harsh on McDonnell? Yes, it would be. But like when you talk about lads that have credit in the bank, like Rory Beggan couldn't have any more credit in the bank than he does. I wouldn't be that surprised if he played. No, Cluxton didn't come straight in when he came back last year, but like, yeah, I think the interview we'd probably all love to get is David O'Hanlon to get what his mentality was when Cluxton came back last year and he basically saw no game time for the rest of the year. He was back involved this year for the league, so he obviously took it pretty well, played a good bit of league time. I know Evan Comerford started the league final, but I think Fionn Corey's going to try and do what's best to try and win the game at the weekend. And if that means bringing a fella that's only technically back fully in the squad the last 10 days, then I still think he'll do it.
But what happens then if he puts Beggan in now and then in another week or two a contract is offered to him from an American football team? That's where this is a really difficult one, because like if Beggan has thrown his hat in, fully into this American football thing, which I think is an unbelievable opportunity and thing to be able to do over the last few months, there's no way he's going to say no if he gets offered a contract. And then look, maybe Corey can just have a conversation with Darren McDonald and say, look, he's my number one while he's here. And if that means he's just back for a little while, look, you are the number two and your opportunity could come. Like, that's going to be tough for McDonald to take if it happens. But I suppose, he can see it as well. Like, I'm sure he would understand.
Yeah, I'd say you would. Like, and the thing about it is, I'd say Beggan and co have a fair idea what percentage chance there is of a call coming at this stage. I'd imagine they do. I'd half question why him and Jackson are back in Ireland if there was a contract close to the table. Okay, maybe I'm a mile off on that, but I think you're far more likely to get a contract when you're over there and there's the opportunity to impress or to go somewhere within half a day and trial or whatever it is. Now that's just my own opinion on it. Charlie Smith obviously got those trials, and that was, the door was nearly ajar. He just needed to just go through it or whatever and impress during those trials. But maybe I'm a mile off, but I would say that maybe they're less likely to get a contract, the fact that they're home now at the minute, and likely to go and play games and potentially take part in games, which could jeopardize a professional contract as well. So that's just my own kind of feelings on it.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what exactly this particular NFL player was doing, but there was a guy called Taylor Heineke, and he had left. He was I'm just looking up an article here on the Washington Post, and he was obviously in line to be a quarterback and all this kind of stuff. He was out of college. Things didn't happen. And I see a quote here that he was 27, sleeping on a couch every night, worn down from chasing a dream that didn't want to be caught. It tortured him to think that the NFL start he would only ever get was in a 2018 loss where he had 3 interceptions and partially tore his tricep. I'm fairly sure he had gone working a full-time job, and then he got the call back in. So from what I can see, like, you often have players who are working away on their own, that they, have to take up other employment, and then all of a sudden they get the call, an opportunity comes, and they have to drop everything and head along to a training camp or whatever it might be. It could be one of these things whereby, look, the NFL season isn't going to start till I think it's September when it starts, and you just don't know when he'll get a call to come into the practice squad. Let's see how you go. Okay, he seems like a good fit. So I don't think it's as cut and dried as what you might be suggesting there.
Yeah, I know.
I post fake news. I agree on that.
Yeah,
by the way.
Now I don't think it's cut and dry. That's more. It's more of a theory, and I do think, and as I said to you on Monday's show, I do think if they're likely to take a punt, pun fully intended, that they will be taking a punt on someone that's in the cycle a few years, or that they have like evidence of them playing and kicking in that pressurized scenario, and actually playing in competitive games or whatever. I think they're maybe less likely to take the punt on the Irish fella who's been playing a different sport for the last decade.
The Irish lad who's played in front of 50,000 people and kicked pressure freeze. Yeah.
Yes, I know. He's kicked pressure freeze, Shannon, but I know what you're saying, and I hope it happens. But it's, they're different codes. They're different games. Do you know what I mean? Like,
pressure.
Yeah, the pressure is similar. Don't get me wrong. I'd say Rory Beggan would be probably, given what he's experienced, he would be better equipped with dealing with the pressure, maybe, as opposed to Mark Jackson. That's not to say that Jackson wouldn't deal with that well. It's just Beggan has been exposed to that, shall we say, like regularly with Monaghan down through the years and played in big All-Ireland semi-finals. Probably last year in front of, there was definitely 60,000 there anyway. I hope I'm wrong, but I'd love to see the two of them get contracts. I would just hazard a guess and say the fact that they're home and potentially playing championship football maybe makes it seem less likely than I thought it would be a while ago.
An interesting one for Cavan is, and I was reading a piece with Paul Fitzpatrick, journalist based up there, and he was talking about how Cavan, I should say, finished third in Division 2 on 7 points. 4 years ago, 2020, they got relegated from Division 2 on 6 points. So in some ways, the fact that they finished third could be slightly misleading because they haven't won since round 4 on the 25th of February. So they're not exactly coming in flying form here.
We're both the Donegal and the Armagh games round 4 onwards. Am I wrong in saying?
I'll just double check that.
Yeah, the campaign might have been stacked, shall we say, as in more difficult towards the tail end. So it's funny they were relegated. No,
I'm just looking. I'll just read out the fixtures that they had. So they beat Kildare, as everyone did, in the round 1 on the 27th of January. Then they lost by a point to Donegal on the 4th of February. Then they beat Cork by a point. Then they beat Louth by a point. Then they drew a Cavan. So since then, they were beaten heftily by Armagh, 15 points, and they lost by 4 points to Fermanagh. So it's only a couple of games.
Yeah, it's only a couple of games. That would have been a disappointing one to lose to Fermanagh at the end. Fermanagh were after shipping a massive score, weren't they, the week before against Louth. But to be fair, any chance of qualifying or whatever was done, and they were safe at that stage. I just think they're a dangerous prospect, and of all the games where there's a potential for an upset, this is probably the most likely one, I would say.
Okay, well, look, delighted to say we have David Reedy on now of Clare, who's teamed up with Alliance today to look ahead to the upcoming All-Alliance Hurling League final this weekend. For more information, go to alliance.ie/stop the drop. David, how are things with you?
Not too bad. Thanks, Shane, for having me on. I think I could have been a few minutes late. It's like trying to get into Fort Knox there, trying to input the password and everything. So
look, we got you in. That's the main thing. And look, we're not going to put you on the spot asking you all these tricky questions about the league final or whatever. Instead, we're going to just have a bit of crack and do a bit of a Q&A, that sort of stuff, keep it nice and light. So if you're happy with that, or we could ask you the hard ones. It's up to you.
We keep it nice and light, Shane.
Okay, well, look, I asked this one to Adrian Mullen a few minutes ago. Who's your current favourite player to watch? And they can't be from Clare.
Can't be from Clare. Probably a strange one. Stephen O'Keefe, maybe from Ballygunner.
Really?
Yeah. Strange, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, look, we know he's an excellent player, but what is it about his game that you really like watching?
I just think the way he kind of commands that defence. Again, never played against him in the club, but when he was with Waterford, played against him a couple of times. But you can see that he commands the structure of a solid defence, and the way he does that, then his distribution is second to none, and the shot stopping as well is as good as anyone in the country. So, again, faced plenty of shots. He faced plenty of my shots, but not many of them went in.
Who's your favourite player of all time? This can be Clare if you want.
Jeez, we'll go back to the hard questions. So no, it's probably a tricky one. Again, probably the likes of a Kilkenny lad, unfortunately, but the likes of Owen Larkin or someone like that. Just the ball winning ability. Again, it was, I suppose, that team that kind of won the 4 in a row and the multiple All-Irelands that I suppose as a fan you like to see, especially a young fan, you like to see good hurling, and he was definitely one of them that definitely he kind of brought it every day. The way he won the ball, took his scores, brought everyone else into the game as well. So he's up there.
Adrian McGrath, who's a Clare man, is asking, is Gino or Nuggy your favourite hurler of all time? I have no idea who that is.
Barry Nugent is Nuggy, isn't he?
He is. Yeah. Again, he'd have the wrists, and again, he was only still playing junior for the last couple of years. So he'd be up there, right? But I wouldn't have got movement from watching him.
A subtle cut.
What's your earliest memories of ever playing a competitive hurling match? Well, you know, I mean, as insofar as an underage hurling game is competitive.
Probably under 14. So again, there would be kind of town league up until under 12. So I probably would have started only probably under competitively like that under 10 maybe, and then you kind of got distributed into the couple of different clubs that were around, the likes of the Banner, Irog, Clare. So a couple of different clubs like that. So again, once got to Irog, that's when I suppose I really remember hurling and playing games more so than anything else underage.
Who's the man when it comes to a pre-match speech?
Again, another question is who's the funny man in the panel. I like to be laid back enough now. I don't like to get too uptight and too tense before games. So I always have a good chat with Ian Galvin before games. Again, even if you don't have to have a chat with him, just watch him and he could be doing anything. Just enjoy sitting down, looking at him doing something probably that most hurlers probably wouldn't be doing.
So he's a mentor.
Would you be of the mind, David? Different, like no 15 or no 26 are the same in a dressing room. Some lads love being riled up. They love it and they love being emotional and going out. Sounds like you're the opposite of that, and you like to not get too excited in a way.
I'd be kind of probably in the middle. It was actually funny because we had a game, it could have been 2 years ago, for a club game against Ina Kilkenny, and Jason McCarthy got a very bad injury, and the game was stopped for the bones of 45 minutes or even a bit longer. So we went back into the change room, and again, very rarely experienced kind of a stop in the middle of a game like that, and looked over into the corner, and there was two lads sitting back on their phone. Gavin Cooney and Shane O'Donnell, two lads that play inter-county, one football, one hurling. And I was like, Jesus, this, like, we're going out playing a championship game, quarter-final, whatever it was. Like, what are you doing? Probably scrolling on Twitter or something. But that worked for them. So again, for me, I just had to turn away and don't be looking at them and just mind my own business type thing. But yeah, everyone's different. So I'd say I'm somewhere in between. I don't like to be too riled up, or I wouldn't be that laid back. I'd be on my phone, like.
I can't see O'Donnell on his phone in the dressing room that Brian Lohan is in.
And we see Adrian McGrath asking, how close did you get to going the soccer route before 2013 and under 21?
Yeah, I went over to England with Yeovil Town for the ones of 10 days. Again, it was a great experience. So again, that could have been, I'd say I was under 16. But yeah, obviously I'm still here that I didn't make it. but it was the whole experience, kind of like they had just started an academy at that stage. So we were kind of one of the first kind of few over away from England. But the experience of living in a dig for the bonds of 10 days, training a couple of times a day, watching the lads go to school, it was a great experience. But again, as I said, I didn't make it. That side of the water.
Where did you play, David?
Right wing or up front.
I thought you were going to be a command and centre back.
I have the physicality for it, all right. Unfortunately not, no.
I just want, and actually funny enough that you were talking about another sport there. What player from another sport would you admire?
Roy Keane.
Yeah.
And again, it's probably the way he played the game. There was 100 miles an hour, 100%. There was no game, no matter who he was playing against, that he kind of took a step backwards. That he gave to every team the utmost respect, and by doing that, he had to win every challenge. Every kick of the ball was 100%.
And then in terms of a manager from another sport, is there anyone who'd have the head and shoulders above everyone else?
I'm a United fan, so Sir Alex, I suppose, is one of the greats.
I thought you were going to say Ralph Rangnick or Ollie Solskjaer.
No, although I did like the Solskjaer stick to football interview. I don't know, did you see it? Again, it was very insightful to, I suppose, the characters maybe inside in the dressing room, and maybe the lack of characters as well to a certain degree.
Is it painful watching Man United at the moment? It's great for the rest of us.
Yeah. Again, the game against the last night against Brentford, we kind of had it switched off, and then the way that they scored the goal in the last 5 minutes of added time and then to concede as well, there's something lacking there. And again, it's probably from the top down, but players definitely have to put their hands up and look at themselves.
If United were a GA club, the committee would have been gotten rid of, the manager would have been gotten rid of, and you'd be playing all the minors, I'd say now at this stage.
Exactly.
Yeah, and there'll be family feuds left, right, and centre. What team do you most like to beat, David?
Stick to the soccer question there.
No. You could go club or a county here. We'll give you a bit of an out.
There's not much of an out there because there's no out. It's actually worse.
Yeah. I did play a good bit of soccer now, in fairness. 2019, I took a year out with Clare, and I played a lot of soccer with Newmarket Celtic. And again, they won 8 or 9 leagues and cups in a row. And I suppose the biggest rivalry there was with Avenue. From the town of Ennis, massive club as well, but that rivalry is kind of like Newmarket took it over for a long while, but it's probably swinging the other way now again, where Avenue are coming back really strong.
So your biggest rivals were a team from the town that you live in and play hurling with, like.
Yeah, basically. But it's like that. That's soccer, though. Like again, if that's in the GA circles, like you've one club and that's your club. But in soccer, it's completely different. It's funny the way. And again, even for a GA person, that I suppose when you go play soccer, like you don't bring them kind of loyalties of your GA club with you yet. So I'm sure some people won't be too happy with that.
What's the most unusual job you've ever had in your life?
Jesus. When I was in school, a kitchen porter in the West County for a while.
Okay.
I was scrubbing pots. I suppose. I was in the kitchen then as well for scrubbing pots. So my outlet would be maintenance man in the West County. And I suppose he got me the job. But again, like it was only for a summer. And probably that was long enough, and it probably put me on the right road to get an education and see where that brings me. Who's
the joker on the panel? Maybe you've answered this already, actually. Is it Ian Galvin?
Yeah, we'll stick away from Ian. Ian gets too much credit, probably. Give it to the likes of Davy Fitz or something. He get a good laugh out of himself and Peter Duggan be two good messers.
Okay, who's the best trainer?
Davy Mack is savage. Every day you mark him or he's on the field, that you know you're going to be in a tough situation, that he won't leave any stone unturned to give his 100%. A bit like a Roy Keane of the GA side of things.
Okay, who's the best dressed and who's the worst dressed?
Shane O'Donnell's the worst dressed, anyways. Some of them, he has these white high top boots that I don't know where he got them, but they're not a style icon. Most definitely. So, best dressed in. David Fitz comes in sharp, coming from work.
Okay. In suits or what are we talking about here?
Yeah, a bit of a mixture. A bit of suits, tie on sometimes. Sometimes top one left open. Yeah.
Okay, turning heads. What do you remember of your first time ever being at Croke Park?
At Clare last, probably 2002. Was it against Kilkenny?
Yeah.
That 2002, yeah. Again, I think I went probably up with my uncle who's from Westmeath. Two of us sitting in the upper Hogan, and again, it was a joy to see that Kilkenny team play. But then when it was Clare on the opposite end, it was a tough one as well.
Okay. What player loves the media attention? Now, obviously, you're in the media here today, so it's not an ideal spot for you. But who loves it?
We give it to Shane Meehan. He's been wheeled out for a lot of gigs over the last while. And again, it's grand for some of the college students that they've a bit of time on their hands between courses or between classes. That's what they're telling us, anyways. But we'll give it to Shane.
Do you enjoy doing bits of media, David, or would you prefer to not be doing it? Do you ever think it in any way affects your performance at the weekend or anything like that? Some lads like it. and like it maybe even takes their mind off things. How do you kind of view it?
I don't mind it, to be honest. As long as it's kind of structured. What I wouldn't like is again I have a block of a time for a couple of interviews today, and that's it. If it was dragging on, or if it was dragging on over a couple of days before coming to a game, I'd be saying no. But like again, we actually did the podcast, myself and Adrian O'Sullivan, over the women's hurling back in COVID times. We did it for kind of 2 years.
That's right.
Yeah. And again, the fact it wasn't like, again, doing something like that, it wasn't in male intercounty or male club season. So to take you're not going to get lambasted basically for saying something that someone else could take, I suppose, bring to their performance against you. It was on nearly a different code basically, and it was really enjoyable. Again, that was, I think, 2019 and 2020, and then I suppose intercounty we came back 100% with Clare. I was back in with the panel as well, so I just didn't have the time to put that much attention on it.
Who thinks the ladies love them? Like, who's the shaper?
I better not get anyone in trouble here, but
I can tell you, David, who the biggest shaper in the three of us is, and he's it's not you and it's not me.
I see he has the hair gel then you're as a living the Dublin high life, is it?
That's it, exactly.
Yeah, but it's definitely one of the young lads that are in college. They always seem to have a good semester one, and maybe get a missus then to quieten them down for semester 2 or something like that.
What's the first time that you played at Croke Park, actually, or like, is there an early days like inter-county game that kind of really stood out for you that was memorable?
I suppose one of the first ones they're playing in Croke Park, I think it was against Galway could have been 16 or 17. I think it went to a replay.
18.
18,
yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, 18. That went to
I tell you
replay,
why I know, David, and I don't like to say this, because it was your first time in Croke Park since the 13 All-Ireland final. That's how I know.
It was 18, so but yeah, that was the first time in Croke Park. But like, I suppose my first memory would have been of playing into county was probably not in the limelight. It was against Antrim in Port Leash or somewhere around Leash in pre-season. And again, I know we got a bus up to Antrim, or bus up to Leash, sorry. Again, it could have been early January in a challenge game. And I think only 20 of us went up, and it was kind of all the new lads on the panel that went up. Hail, snow, the worst conditions you've ever played in. Again, I was playing corner forward on a dog of a cornerback. So I was getting no ball coming in. We were against the wind in the first half, and just being the butt of the hurley. I got well used to into county hurling in the first 35 minutes.
And okay, next question then. Who's the most famous person that follows you online?
Can I say Shane O'Donnell? No.
I suppose.
Yeah, he had a good 30-minute interview there. So again, that's probably it. I don't think no big players or no big people follow me. I'm a bit boring online.
What's your proudest day playing?
Probably Dalliance League in 2016. Again, we don't have many medals in Clare. If you look back through our history, that you can count nearly on one hand the medals between Alliance League and national medals. So that was success. I came on the panel in 2014, missed the 2013 All-Ireland. So that was something big. And since then, we've been trying to build something better. We lost kind of 4 months of finals, 2 to Cork, 2 to Limerick. But we've taken learnings from each one of them. I suppose that's probably the biggest thing. Any games that we've won the last couple of years or lost the last couple of years, we've been taking learnings and trying to build that collective mindset in terms of going to the next level.
Just so another couple of quick fire ones. Biggest disappointment of your career?
We lost the club championship 2 years ago to Balliet. Again, it's a great Balliet team. Again, it's basically the same team that got to the All-Ireland final, won Munster. Couple of new players in, couple of old players left it, but we were probably in a winning position going down the home straight. But that Ballier, I suppose, characteristics of never say die, they pulled it out of the fire that day and probably deserved to win at the end of the day.
Who's been the biggest influence on your career?
My mother. Again, brought me like my own personal taxi, brought me everywhere. So again, it'd be a shame to leave her out of it. If I visited home, leaving her name out of it, I don't know, would I be too welcome.
Favorite stadium to play in?
Cusack Park, home venue as well. Again, you've seen the way sport has come from Munster Championship games. Place is rocking. Again, no better feeling winning there with that support.
Okay, that's the end of my Q&A. Michael, if there's anything you want to ask David.
Just one quick one, David, and it's a similar question that Shane probably would have asked. Like, if you could look back at your younger self, like 18 years old, 19 years old, any piece of advice you'd give to yourself?
I'm not sure the piece of advice, like, again, the way the game has gone, like, I'm probably as fit and as strong as I've ever been, and I'm 30 now, been on the panel 10 years. I think the way that S&Cs have come into the game down, especially the last two S&Cs we've had, Adrian O'Brien and Lucas at the moment, two of them have been top class. I suppose we've like, you always hear these stories of pre-season or dog to get fit, which that's not the case. There's a science behind it now that you're not dogged. We train, and we train hard when we train, but you're not being dogged. You're not going out running in up massive hills or anything. You're doing all game-based stuff. So I would have loved to seen if we had that science back when I started, where I could be physically, both strength and fitness wise at this stage in my career.
Basically, what you're saying is you weren't doing the running that Mike Mack had the boys doing in '95, etc.
I don't think we ever got that bad now either. So I think
no, it's the famous one that the sparrow disappeared into a bush or something like that and reappeared as the boys were coming back down the hill or something like that. I think something along those lines.
We had a few of them in our early days. That we had a running in Ballybeg Woods there in Ennis. Big track, and there was a couple of shortcuts, but manager had a couple of their backroom staff around each of the shortcuts. But sure, then they leave one out, and we had one right fit fella. This was pre-season now, but one was extremely fit. So we were in groups of 5 and 6. So we the whole way around we were egging them on now that for the second lap, you will do that yourself. We'll take the shortcut, and when you come back, we'll join you again. So and that's what happened. So it was. It was quite funny, but again, I suppose if we did the run, would we been fitter?
There you go. Yeah, never know. Saying that, run smart, not run smart rather than run far. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. We still got the same time as the fitness, so we were okay.
Well, look, David, really appreciate you joining us, and best of luck in the league final and for the year ahead.
Excellent. Appreciate it, lads. Thanks.
Cheers, Dave. Come on.
Okay, brilliant to have Dave on. He's great crack there. And
I always have to say, Shane, I think it's like there's only a certain amount lads can talk about the match. Do you know what I mean? And there's, like, let's call it a spade a spade. If you're in a camp, there's only a certain amount there's very little you're going to say, and I'd be the same. So I always think there's a bit of a duty within the GA to, like, the media will promote the game. I think it's very important to promote the personalities within the game and who these lads are, what they do. What makes them tick, what it's like inside the dressing room, etc. So I always kind of look at it from that point of view rather than, who are you going to be marking at the weekend and what way are you going to play and what way are you going to set up? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're not. I think we'll see that when we go to the match on Sunday. But there's loads of stuff you can find out about lads, like when they take the helmet off, basically. And I think there's a bit of a duty there within the GA to try and do that a bit more.
Imagine if we brought up this tactics board and said, so David, who's going to be marking you? I mean, that's why we don't even bother going down that road. It'd be very unfair to ask a player, and also what are you going to get out of that? So better to just find out about the lads.
Well, I put it this way, Shano. He didn't have to, nor did Adrian, they didn't have to say it is the way it is or anything like that or come up with your stock sayings, because it was just a bit more kind of relaxed, I suppose, you know?
Okay. Well, look, we already talked about the Ulster preliminary round this weekend. For what it's worth, despite their poor form, I still think Monaghan will turn this one around. What way are you leaning?
Yeah, no, I would be of the same. I know Monaghan lost their last 6 games, but I saw them in the flesh the last day, and they probably had the win in that game had they not been down to 13 for the last 10 minutes. And listen, their best outside of the Dublin game, their best performance in the league was the Tyrone game when McManus was playing, when McCarron was playing, and I think they'll have, you know, the majority of their big hitters playing the weekend. Just fascinating to see whether Beggan is part of the squad or not.
Yeah, for sure. The kind of quarterfinals are on this weekend. Galway and Mayo are both going abroad. So Galway are going to London. I mean, they've had so many injuries this year, so that's a huge negative going in for them. And if Pádraic Joyce could manage to get them all on the pitch, you know, Sean Kelly, I don't think he's too far away, but then it's like Damien Comer, Shane Walsh, so on and so forth. I mean, take your pick. But the positives are the forms of the likes of Johnny McGrath, Killian O'Careen, Jack McCabe, Patrick Egan, Liam O'Keneally. Like, they have good players coming, like, but if you look at what they're coming up against this weekend, London, like on league form, the only team that they're rated higher than is Waterford, and you know, so you don't expect it to be that competitive.
No, I think you generally think there's a possibility of a surprise over Ruislip when it's maybe Leitrim, maybe Sligo or someone like that going over with less kind of strength in depth. Like Galway, I know they're going to be down plenty of big hitters at the weekend, but you'd still probably be expecting to come out double digit winners realistically. You know what I mean? And I think for Pádraic Joyce, it's just a matter of trying to buy as much time as possible to give his big hitters a chance to get back on the pitch, basically. And the time frames for different lads we're not aware of, and I suppose that is the real hardest thing to find out. Like, it's so hard to find out when different lads are supposed to be back or whatever. Like, I was in the interview with Jim McGuinness after the Division 2 final the other day, and someone just asked about Patrick McBurty, like, did he go for a scan? He says, I'm not aware of that, and even if I did know, I wouldn't tell you. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the way it is. So when those Galway lads will be back, I don't know, but if they're back and humming the first, you know, mid to late May, they wouldn't be in a bad spot, you'd think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, Mayo, they're heading away, as I said. Also, they just put this up on X there, and the last was 1:25. They put it up. So you can see them all there. Paddy Durkin in the middle there towards the front. They're all ready to go. So that's going to be a big weekend. And you imagine, look, obviously Leitrim came up short there last year, but you couldn't, it'd basically be on the spot fireable offence if they lost this match.
Yeah. It's funny, was it James Horn's first year where they went over to Ruislip and
went extra time?
Extra time, yeah. Mad think how things turned around. They were in the All-Ireland final the year after, and in 13 as well, obviously, and beaten in semi-final in 14. No, like I think the fairy tale was last year.
Mayo lost to Longford that year as well, didn't they? They got knocked out of the qualifiers.
Yeah, beaten in the qualifiers by Longford that year. Yeah, fairly humble beginnings, you'd have to say, for Horn's first reign.
And 4 years in a row, they beat the reigning All-Ireland champions.
That's right, yeah. Sure, it's nuts, like, when you think about it. But like I'd say New York had their kind of moment in the sun last year, where it was actually in the dark, I think, by the time the game finished up against Leitrim. But very, very, very difficult to see. Obviously, Johnny Glynn is now with Galway as well, who would have been one of their biggest players last year, and they're going to be down him. It's kind of, I always find it funny. It's only in the next day or two that you really find out who New York have available to them. No one really knows. I know Keane O'Dea from Clare is over there, and I actually saw him recruiting on X, looking for any players that are coming over for the summer. I'd say there's clubs back in Clare and other places. It's nearly telling them to delete the thing, not to be trying to coax some boys out and pull them away from home. But Mayo should be winning this handy enough, you'd imagine. Don't think Dermot O'Connor will be back, but I think they've largely a clean enough bill of health apart from that.
Okay, well then, in the other game, Leitrim will meet Sligo. Also in Leinster, Westmeath will meet Wicklow. When they met in the league, I think it was maybe only a month ago, Westmeath won that game by 6 points. Longford are up against Meath, and I think Meath will be fairly heavily fancied to win that game. The last time that Longford even got to a Leinster semi-final was the late 80s. So never mind getting much further than that. This is round one. Wexford will meet Carlow. So Wexford won their league clash by 10 points. And then Carlow, they're just missing a lot of players. Dara Foley, he's got a calf injury. Jordan Morrissey's gone travelling. So I think he's gone for the season. Not sure Kieran Moore is right at this stage.
He's out. He's only coming back from a cruise ship. Yeah, like kind of difficult enough to make it a little harder to make a case for Carlow. Like they were beaten by 10 points, but they only scored 7 points in that game in Division 4. And it's only about a month ago, I think, maybe 5 weeks ago. Morrissey, I think, was heading off at the start of the year, and kind of, I don't know, did Niall Carew persuade him to stay around for the league, and now he's gone off to the States. Foley's the top scorer in Carlow football history. I think he went over the 400-point mark last year, and he's their captain. I think Jamie Clark is the standing captain for the weekend, and Colin Crowley's the vice captain. Yeah, you definitely have Wexford as favourites here. Like Wexford, realistically, outside of that harsh penalty call, dubious would be a better word to use, they would have been promoted to Division 3. So yeah, Wexford definitely favourites going into that.
Yeah, okay. And then Waterford are against Tipperary in the Munster quarter-final, and the prize is a clash against Clare in the semi-final, and whoever wins that will, of course, be guaranteed Sam Maguire. And on Tipcast this week, I was chatting with Shane Brophy and Conor O'Dwyer, who was the Tipperary football chairman last year, and they were just talking about Tipperary didn't have a great league, huge player turnover. I mean, the turnover since winning Munster back in 2020 is incredible. These two teams drew in the league, but here he is talking about Tipperary and their prospects.
Being honest, the league didn't go as well as we might have liked. You know, some good performances, but overall, somewhat below par. For being honest, you know, I think at the start of the year you'd be thinking that, you know, promotion is certainly a realistic aim, but by the end of the year you're probably thinking that, you know, we're not ready for Division 3 yet. You know, that given where the team are at and their development and a lot of new face and new management team, that maybe another year in Division 4 isn't such a bad thing, you know. But you know, they mixed the good and the bad. That started off a little bit unlucky against Carlow, I thought, even though well beaten on the night. A good victory over Longford, played well against Laois, and that was probably the height of it. You know, the London game was disappointing, the Waterford game was disappointing, and even though, and certainly the Wexford game was poor, you know, but finished a bit better against Leitrim. But overall, listen, I'd say 4 or 5 out of 10 at max, to be honest with you, you know.
Yeah, Shane, when you look at it, there was 14 points on offer in Division 4, and Tipperary ended up with 4. So, you know, 1 win, 2 draws, and 4 losses. It's not hectic.
No. Look at it. It's like I think I said at the start of the year, I didn't think promotion was. I didn't think promotion was realistic, just with the turnover of players that was there, and new management that were, I suppose, as Paul Kelly has said, they were probably 6 weeks later starting than he would have hoped. And look, maybe that explains maybe some of the elements maybe of their play. Maybe towards the end of the league campaign, maybe they decided to maybe focus on a little bit more training in terms of being ready for the championship. And like as Conor said, like you have to be ready to go up to the next level. And look, I don't think Tip are ready to. We're ready to go up to Division 3. You know, that's not being defeated. It's just being realistic. Like we're so far off where we were in 2020. Not just in terms of confidence, but just the talent pool is we're effectively starting all over again.
Yeah, and that's definitely the truth, Michael. But at the same time, I'd be feeling like Tip can go down far field and win this game.
It's kind of very important that they do, isn't it? Like they were
very tight. Go down there expecting to win.
No, they can't go down there expecting to win. But and they were very tight games when they played them. I think they played them twice last year, didn't they? In Munster and in the Tailteann. And both very, very tight games. Probably going to be expecting it to be tight enough. Like it's, in a way, it's the perfect draw for the two of them at this stage after both having disappointing Division 4 campaigns. I'm hearing through the grapevine that there's a possibility of whenever Waterford are knocked out of the Munster Football Championship, whether that's this weekend or, you know, in a couple of weeks' time, that there will be no training basically between then and the start of the Tailteann Cup, that they won't continue on as a cost-saving measure. The degree of truth to that, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out whenever they do exit, because like that just means you're not even surviving it if that's the case. So I'm hoping that's not the case. I definitely hope that's not the case. But Waterford will see this as an opportunity. Tip will probably view it as you know, several banana skins lying around, because if they do go down to Waterford at the weekend, like, that's a disaster heading into the Tailteann Cup. There's no point in saying any different. They need to get at least one win on the board. But Waterford will definitely see it as an opportunity. I'd say Tip will just about win it.
Yeah, do you know what? I think in time more and more teams will just pull their sides out, because it'll be like, what is the point here? We're operating at such a low level. We can't win the top competition. We're going to be getting hammered in all the group games in the Tailteann Cup. What's the point? I think in time it's going to move in that direction.
Yeah, don't know, did I see it mooted in some quarters? I can't remember where, about the notion of a third tier championship for probably the likes of Waterford or Tipperary at the minute, and hopefully that won't be the case with Tipperary in time, because there is still a fair focus there. But there's probably a handful of counties where football is not priority, shall we say.
Yeah, okay. The other games in Munster this weekend, Cork are against Limerick. Well, it's the only other game. And the winners are going to be up against Kerry, and really up against it there. Like Cork, you think about it, this time last year, they lost to Clare in the quarter-final. Now, they went on then and beat Louth, Mayo and Roscommon, ended up losing to Derry in the final 8 of the All-Ireland series. Sean Powter was saying, this is in the Cork Echo, I saw this, I think with that confidence, he's kind of talking somewhat about their poor start to the league, then they had 3 wins in a row, and then they drew with Armagh. He said, I think with that confidence, you kind of see players starting to express themselves now. John Cleary, the manager, reiterated that point in the dressing room after the Armagh game. It was a good end to the league, but it's all about championship now. We need to get our bodies right for a massive test against Limerick. John made the point that we want to make Páirc Uí Chaoimh, I should say, a fortress. We want to make it hard for teams to come here. Thankfully, we've been slowly doing that. And up against the team that's lost all 7 of their Division 3 games, they're surely gonna get a win here.
Even in that last game, or the second to last game, Limerick played Wicklow, and they were beaten 9 points to 8. Like Limerick were relegated pretty emphatically. The interesting one, Jimmy Lee's playing Josh Ryland goals, who we know as a very good forward for the Doon Hurlers, but also, a very good footballer, very good full forward for the county footballers generally. But he's only just back. He's not long back from cruciate surgery, and he played. I think he played underage in goals. So maybe it's a good way of. He doesn't have to. I'm sure he'll probably play outfield maybe again next year, but it's not a bad way. They obviously think he's well able to pick lads out. He's a good communicator or whatever. But it's interesting kind of move, I thought, as well. From a Cork point of view, they kind of backed themselves into the corner in the opening rounds of the league, but they got the train firmly back on tracks, and I think like their stats in the last 4 games of what they scored from play were off the charts. Huge numbers from play, and in Conor Corbett, and obviously there's Stephen Sherlock and Brian Hurley and a few more as well. But in like Corbett, they have potentially like a jewel in the crown there. He looks like he's ready to flourish at senior intercounty level. So it's not like when they played Clare last year in the quarter-final. Anything other than a Cork victory here would be a shock of epic proportions. Yeah,
they want to win this, and they want to put it right against Clare as well for what happened last year, and then guarantee that they're in the Sam Maguire competition. Because some teams, you're like, geez, would a run in the Tailteann Cup be so bad? Whereas I feel like Cork, they just need to get back to playing against the best teams, because they generally tend to have the raw materials. They just need to get back to competing consistently.
Cork, the winners of this are playing Kerry, are they not?
Oh, sorry, I'm mixing it up with the other side, with Tipperary against Waterford. Yeah, look, obviously they're the mercy of how things go in the provincial systems. Like
the provincial draw in Munster is like Cork were in All-Ireland quarter-final last year, and the flip of it is obviously Clare were in a Munster final last year, but you would have Cork a bit ahead of Clare just based on league standings or whatever. But like Clare are probably going to be in a Munster final, and by virtue of that, through to the All-Ireland stages. That's not to say that they don't deserve it, but there are teams, ahead of them, the likes of Down, who were promoted from Division 3 this year and will play Division 2 next year. But there's a fair chance that they won't play All-Ireland level this year. The whole system is a bit bonkers.
Yeah, it actually is nuts. Yeah, the idea of a team down a tier or 2 below getting into the All-Ireland series ahead of Cork, who, based on recent results anyway, would be... their potential is to be competing with some of the better teams in Ireland. And one side of the provincial draw is Division 3 and 2 Division 4 teams. So you're guaranteeing that you're diluting the quality of the All-Ireland Super 16s. Yeah, it's nuts as far as I'm concerned.
But Travis Wheeler does make the point. He says provincial draw is proper open draw in Munster, lads. And he says, and rightly so, Tip won in 2020 and what a victory it was. Like, it's kind of forgotten, but like that Tipperary Limerick game, that was a belter of a game. Remember Sweeney kicked a sideline over the bar to level it, maybe force extra time. And then obviously the fairy tale happened then on, was it November 20th?
Could have been.
I think it was November 20th.
All I remember is winning.
And then Cavan beat Donegal later on that day. Probably one of the, like, it's mad actually. That'll be one of the GA days that I will remember most. And there was no hurling that day, which is unusual.
Okay, and then just what Billy Lee was saying, we started poorly in games. This is obviously their run of 7 defeats from 7 league outings. That's the biggest thing. We're constantly chasing games, which is the problem. I suppose we're inching through things to change stuff, but you can't change everything and throw it all out until you see what's actually wrong with it. So we're trying to inch forward in that regard. So I don't know, maybe he's playing his cards close to his chest, or maybe it's a case of figuring out what's actually wrong. Joe Dean's young lad playing for Cork tonight. Yeah, I saw some tweets about Killay's, a famous name from Kilkenny. So best of luck to him. And although if that's against Tipperary, I'm mixing up some of the underage games. If that's against Tipperary, no, sorry. Look, best of luck to you on a personal level, but obviously I want Tipperary to win that game. Just some of the Ulster minor fixtures that are going on this week. They're all Saturday. Derry against Cavan, Fermanagh, Donegal, Armagh against Antrim, and Tyrone against Down. So, anything else before we finish up?
No, I'm particularly looking forward to Saturday night. It is a bit funny that we have championship starting on one code and then a league finishing in another. But regardless of what type of conditions, storms or otherwise, would still be expecting a tasty enough game on Saturday night. And I think there's plenty at stake. And as David Reedy says there, I think like he didn't say how important it is for them to win a league title verbatim, but he kind of implied how important it is, given that they haven't won that many medals, and he only has a league medal from 2016. He lost a kind of a league final / Munster quarter final in 20, and he's lost 4 Munster finals. So they will want to win on Saturday, as will Kilkenny, and I think it'll throw up a fairly tasty game.
Richard Hogan, Cummins and Cal's sons are playing for Tip tonight. Trevor Fletcher's young lad, top scorer for the Offaly Miners too. So the generations are coming through. That's pretty much it from the show. A reminder, we're going to have that live show in the Dome in Thurles. So scan the QR code there for tickets, or check our X account or Deshaun Tracy's X account. They're presenting the show there. John Milan, Kieran Carey, Eddie Brennan, Seamus Callan. You'd hardly get better than that. And also a reminder, on Patreon, patreon.com/OurGame, we have the 2-minute tactics videos, a couple of audio podcasts every week, very regular written columns also. And otherwise, that's all she wrote, Michael.
All good, Shano. I'll chat to you Monday.
Right. Chat to you all, folks, then.